Hey everyone, I'm so sorry I'm a few minutes late. Every single time I try to do a Facebook Live, my laptop decides to not cooperate. So apologies. Let me tell my friends that I am online. Hold on. Join me in my Facebook Live about Chinese literacy. Okay. All right, so thank you for joining me tonight. I know it's tough for folks on the East Coast, so because it's midnight, but this is the only time I can actually chat with you guys without four small humans running around in the background. So I'm Virginia Duan, also known as Mandarin Mama. I've written a book called So You Want Your Kid to Learn Chinese, and you can find it on Amazon, currently in its ebook form. And today, what we are going to be talking about is Chinese literacy. So if you want your children to be literate, and the different levels and what it kind of takes to have your kids be literate. So right off the bat, I want to say that just to kind of give you some background, if you're not familiar with how the Chinese language works for reading, there are about like 20 to 40,000 characters, depending on how you want to count them. Whether you want to choose like super esoteric and, you know, like very obscure characters, or if you just want to talk about like in modern usage. But yes, there's about 20 to 40,000 Chinese characters. To be considered literate, you need at least 2,000, which is enough to read a newspaper. And to be considered like highly, like more educated, you need about 3,000 to 5,000, and like above, I think 5,000 or 6,000 is like highly educated. So for all intents and purposes, when I say literate, I mean about 2,000 to 3,000 characters. Okay, so that's just to give you some background. And then furthermore, I want there to be an understanding of, for literacy, the most important thing you can do actually has nothing to do with reading, and it has everything to do with comprehension. Just like, so by reading, I mean you not only can read the characters, you need to comprehend what it means. So anyone can read English, right? Like if you know how phonics work, you can read whatever, right? But you might not understand what it means. But you can still read English because it's a phonetic language. And as long as you know how the sounds work that correspond to the letters, you can technically read. You don't understand what you're reading, but you can read. Now with Chinese, the characters are, it's a symbolic language. So all the characters represent either a discrete word, or you put them together, all these different characters together, and they make like compound words. Okay, and so the biggest key to your children, or you for that matter, being literate in Chinese is actually comprehension. Your kids need to understand what they are reading. Otherwise, it's kind of like, what's the point? You're reading something, but you don't know what you're reading. Like that's, to me, I find that kind of like a meaningless endeavor. The whole point of learning Chinese, whether to speak it or to read it or to write it, is to communicate, and to communicate effectively. Okay, so to read Chinese and not understand it, I mean, I can't imagine anyone doing that. But if you were to, as like a feather in your cap or something, it's not, I think it's silly. But, you know, go for it. All right, so anyway, I digress. So again, the key to Chinese literacy is actually comprehension. And so what we want you to do is, if you want your children to get better at reading, you need to up their comprehension, and which we talked about in the first two videos, I think. Maybe it was the second video, which was all about comprehension. So, okay. So again, same 5 levels as before. Exposure, beginner, and then basic functionality, advanced, and native. So we'll start off with some exposure. So what does some exposure mean? It means like if you see a character, if you see Chinese, you can identify, hey, that's Chinese, as opposed to as opposed to like, oh, you look at it and you think, oh, it could be Japanese or Korean or Thai. No, so exposure, part of exposure is when you see Chinese characters, and by you, I mean your kid. When your kid sees Chinese characters, they know that it is Chinese and not another language, okay? 2 is, again, like I said, like comprehension. Like they need to know they're hearing, like they need to understand Chinese. They need to actually hear Chinese and understand it. So you need to read to your kid, and you need to have them listen to audiobooks and anything that really ups Chinese comprehension. Okay, so that's just some exposure. And like I said, exposure is just exposure. I mean, no one's expecting you to read. You just need to kind of know basic things like, oh, hey, that's Chinese. Good job. The second one is beginner level. Hopefully, can people hear me? Hopefully you can hear me. If you can't, please let me know. So the second part is a beginner level. What can they do? How can you help your child be a beginner? So when you are reading in Chinese to your child, it's just like in English, you point to the word, point to the character as you're reading. So that's one way to help them. And then you want to kind of front load them. If you're going to teach, my personal opinion is if you're going to teach your kid to be literate, you need to front load them with high frequency characters. And what does that mean? What do I mean by high frequency characters? Like I said, there's like 20,000 characters in the Chinese language. Don't be like teaching your kid the most esoteric one, right? Like they should be reading characters. You should be teaching them characters. There's the 2,000 most frequently used characters. And you can get posters on it. There's lots of, books. And so you want to front load them with as many high frequency characters as possible. So that's like 我, which means I, or 的, which is like kind of an article of like a possessive article, or 个, which is like a I don't even know the proper grammatical terms, but it means like it's like a measure word, which is used a lot. Okay, so you want to use them and front load it as much as possible, and then front load 注音, which is the Taiwanese phonetic system, as much as possible. Now, the reason why I actually have a blog post on this is because at some point your kids' interest level and developmental level will be higher than the characters that they can recognize. And I don't know about you, but I personally don't like reading things for babies. So same thing for older children. They're not going to want to read things for babies. Okay, so but they might, so they cognitively will be above the level of the books that they can actually read. So the 注音 will help them be able to read books that are more appropriate and more age appropriate without their lack of character knowledge as a basis. Now, if you choose not to go the 注音 route, which is totally a valid thing, you don't have to listen to me, or it might not be within your wheelhouse, you don't find that important, then you need to front load more characters even faster. So just to give you kind of some background, in China, they teach pinyin, okay, which is using the romantic, the Roman alphabet for sounds. So instead of 注音, which is they have a similar, like I guess Chinese symbols for it. Instead, they're using Roman, like A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever. So why wouldn't I advocate pinyin for you to have your kids learn pinyin instead of 注音? And the main reason is because it's just supply. Okay, there are not very many books with pinyin for your children to read because of how China teaches Chinese. China front loads as many characters as possible so that by second grade, I think I forget. It's all on my blog, but by second grade, they should be able to read a lot of their books, their age-appropriate books, without assistance. And so China front loads as much as possible to their kids, okay? And so before second grade, you'll find like books supplemented with pinyin, but after that, they are not, okay? But in Taiwan, they go much slower. They teach Zhuyin like phonics at the very beginning, along with some characters. And they slowly ease into it. And so they expect their kids to be able to read without assistance by like sixth grade. Okay, so that's an extra 4 years. And so as a result, there's a lot of children's books with Zhuyin to assist you. Okay, so by all means, you don't have to teach your kids Zhuyin. That's my personal preference, and my family is from Taiwan, so of course we have this preference. But it's also like a practical reason because you don't have to front load as quickly, okay? Because there are available materials for you. So, and then for beginner level, you just have to read. Either you read to your kids, not either, but read to your children, read books that are above their level, or have them listen to audiobooks. I don't like to read to my children. That's just like too much quality time with them. So we listen to a lot of audiobooks, and we listen to them on repeat, so that even if they don't catch it the first time, their comprehension improves. So by the like 30th time they're listening to it, they're asking me even deeper vocabulary that I have to like look up on Pleco as I'm driving, which you should not do because that's dangerous. But yeah, so read. Have them read as much as possible, like either age-appropriate books or even a little bit higher or a little bit lower, like just whatever they want to read, whatever they're willing to read, have them read it. And either you read to your children, or you have a tutor who reads to them, or a family member who reads to them, or you get audiobooks, or you go on YouTube and you find someone reading a book, okay? So that's for beginner level. Basic functionality is, I want to say by basic functionality, you should be pretty close to, like I'm functionally illiterate, okay? So like I know about 1,500 characters probably. If I like, hey Jane, if I'm doing like really awesome, I know about 1,500 characters, and I can like guess most from context. But I cannot really function in Taiwan, and you're always like feeling stupid, always feeling stupid. So you just, there's big gaps, right? So being basic functionality is maybe what I have. Like maybe like I'm on the lower end of it, okay? So like I can like function, I can kind of know where I'm going, I can kind of tell, but I just know enough to be dangerous. Okay, so how do you get to basic functionality? Again, lots of reading. I mean, it sucks, but it's like English too, right? Like how do your kids get better at reading English? They read. You have to practice. You have to do it daily or a lot, and it's mostly sweat equity. Okay, I mean, because it's just, unless if your kid has a photographic memory, which they might, and then awesome, but most children do not. Okay, so you have to read. Have an adult read to them. But again, everything I just said before, but just the levels are getting progressively higher. Okay, the types of books you're reading are more difficult. Maybe chapter books now, basic, simple chapter books. It's getting to harder chapter books, comics. Have them practice reading fiction and nonfiction because it's a different type of language, right? Take them to extended stays in Taiwan or China, if possible, because then they'll be surrounded by the language and they kind of have to read also, right? And then it's upping their comprehension. So that all kind of works together. You can follow curriculum. Taiwan, I'm sure China does too, but I'm more familiar with Taiwan. They have Kangshuan materials where they help kids learn Zhuyin and how to read, and like you can go through those. You can go to a stationery store and buy one of those like reading comprehension workbooks. I bought a bunch of those for my kids actually, because I wanted to work on comprehension and reading. And so it was like a short few paragraphs, then you answer like multiple guest questions. And so that kind of makes them like get used to listening closely. Okay, so it mimics what you would do in English, right? Except it's in Chinese. And then, of course, to help them with literacy, you might want to teaching them like how a character is made. Okay, like the different components of a character. So like radicals, what the strokes are called, like what is a stroke order, all those things. And then knowing just how a character is formed. Is it a sound component? Is it a like a radical component? Is it I can't remember all the names of it, but yeah, but teaching your children how to do that and how to like put together a character will help with their literacy. Teaching them idioms, okay, because a lot of Chinese writing uses a lot of idioms, and there's like a bajillion idioms, and yeah, they just like in English, like it requires you can understand an idiom with someone saying it in English, but you don't necessarily know what it means. Okay, and then reading subtitles on TV, that'll also help. So that is it's a lot of work, guys. It's not easy. Okay, and then you have your advanced, which is you can read poems, like classical poems, novels. You can probably read blogs and websites and newspapers, and pretty much you can read most things. Okay, like you're pretty advanced, and anything that's written you can probably read without assistance, whether it's pinyin or zhuyin. I can't really do that. I can only read things by a lot of copying and pasting. I get better. I'm not at that level. I totally thought I was better than I actually am. Nothing like trying to like actually break down what it means for each level to realize that I'm so mediocre, but my children will not be. So I don't have to be awesome. My children can be awesome. So when we go back to Taiwan, they can tell me what to order. All right, and then, oh yes, and that's like, actually menus are on the advanced level, which is kind of surprising. But if you think about it, the characters that they use are actually not commonly used characters unless if you're eating. And so if you don't have cultural awareness of what types of foods are on a typical Chinese menu, then you would not be able to read it. The only reason why I can order off a Chinese menu is not because I can read it. It's because I have gone to Chinese restaurants my entire life, and I have memorized the things that I'd like to eat, and I have written them down in notes, and that's why I never deviate from the menu that I have memorized, because that would expose my illiteracy, and I don't enjoy feeling stupid. All right. And then finally we have native level, right? Like you can read contracts, you can, read super fancy, like classical Chinese, like you're just highly educated, you're native. You like pretty much anything they throw at you, you can read, okay? You can read like crazy fonts. like if it's not like a certain type of font, I have no idea. It's like my ability to read Chinese has left the building. So, that's a quick run through of literacy. And what I want to emphasize, other than comprehension, which is, again, vital to literacy, is that what am I trying to say? It takes a lot of effort. And a main reason why I chose to homeschool my children, other than to keep the verbal fluency, is because Chinese schools and Mandarin immersion schools are not enough to make your children functionally literate. Okay, and because the majority of Chinese schools, which are like weekly, they maybe learn 100 to 150 characters a year, and many of them stop in high school and start helping you prep for the AP exam. So you really only get 10 years at 150 characters. That gets you to about 1,000 to 1,500, assuming you, which is what, I'm a product of 12 years of Chinese school, okay? And that's, again, that's like if you had 100% retention, right, and comprehension. That's 1,500 characters. You need 2,000 to be functionally literate. Okay, you need 2,000 to read a newspaper. So that means after 12 years of investment, I am still illiterate. Okay, I cannot read anything you put it in front of me, and it's depending on what it is, it's anybody's guess if I know what it says. Okay, and yes, I've improved because of my children, but I don't really anticipate me ever getting better. So I want you guys to think about it. You need to have appropriate expectations for your children's literacy when you send your kids to Mandarin immersion and weekly Chinese schools. If you are sending them and you're thinking that your kids will be literate at the end of this time period without any supplementing on your part, you are, God bless you, you are not having appropriate expectations. Okay, Mandarin immersion is the same thing. Okay, most of them only go up to 5th grade. Very few of them are in junior high and then high school and then the AP exam. Okay, but even then, it's not literacy. Okay, you're not fully literate. Like I think most Mandarin immersion schools again are the 100 to 150 level amount of characters. Okay, so and if it's only 5 years, that's even less than the 12 years of Chinese school. Okay, except that you have a lot more exposure to it. But even then, if they start off as 90-10, they start whittling down to 80-20, and then pretty soon they're 50-50 because it's a regular school and your kids still has to be able to like meet your state standards and take the SATs and read English, right? Like, so that's still like 500 to like maybe 800 characters. That's not even close to functionally literate, right? That's like a third, or maybe like a third, like it's under half. Okay, like it's 40% of the 2,000 characters you need. So that's 5 years of your life now. Okay, of your kid's life. All right, and so you need to have appropriate expectations about Mandarin immersion and Chinese and weekly like Chinese schools. Okay, so without supplementation, your kid is not going to be literate. And if you're okay with that, then you're okay with that. Okay, that's no problem. Everyone has different standards. Like everyone has different desires for the kids. Like so, but if you do want your kid to be literate, like actually literate, not just hodgepodge. You can read like 6 out of 10 words or something. Then you can't just leave it up to the Mandarin immersion school. You cannot just leave it up to the Chinese school. You have to either you yourself or you need to hire somebody to supplement your children. And you need to front load it as soon as possible because I guarantee you, by high school, unless if they're totally motivated on their own, it's too late, okay? Because it's too late and then it's also too early, if that makes sense. Like it's too late if they do not have personal interest in it. But if they have personal interest in the future, then it's too early, right? Because my main beef with when I was in Chinese school at like 15 or 16 years old, I'm reading like college level textbooks in school. We're examining college level stuff, right? But in Chinese, I'm reading like Wang Dazhong, like 去上学. Like I can't even really read that I could read that obviously, but like, it's like very simple text for like a first grader if we're like, and I'm in college prep classes. I'm not interested in like a preschooler stuff, so that's why I emphasize so highly the front loading of characters. So if you seriously want your kid to be functionally literate, like 2,000 plus characters, you cannot achieve that by just throwing them into a school or, like either a weekly school or a Mandarin immersion school. It is not enough, okay? And so I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if you are going in there thinking that your kid will be functionally literate, you will be sadly disappointed, okay? Now, if you're going in there and you're okay with that, then you'll be happy, right? Because you're getting what you paid for and they don't promise anything else, okay? So you just have to be able to you just have to do the math, right? And if that is what you want, like if you're okay with some exposure or beginner level, then it's perfectly fine. Just leave your kids. You don't have to do any extra effort. But if you want them to be at basic functionality or advanced or native, then you have to put in a lot more effort. And you have to know that that is not enough, okay? So sorry to get all like Debbie Downer on you, but I mean, I'd be doing you a disservice if I just said, oh yeah, just throw the Mandarin immersion and they'll be fine, okay? And so, and it's not just a matter of learning it once, okay? I learned a lot of characters once. In fact, I learned the same character over and over again, many days in a row, and I still can't remember it, okay? So it's not about learning it once. That's not enough, okay? It takes repetition because, again, unlike English, where if you know how to read, you know how to read. You might not know what you're reading, but you can read it. Again, Chinese, it's every word's a different character or a different combination of characters, and you either know it or you don't. You maybe you can guess from context if your comprehension's high enough. So a lot of people think I'm more literate than I actually am because my comprehension is higher. Okay, so and as a result, I can guess what the next character should be. But you always have that fear that you guessed wrong. So yeah, so it is not only just supplementing. It is daily practice until they are actually literate. And then, even then, you have to keep it up because you can forget. Like, why would you remember it? I mean, my mother, she grew up in Taiwan, went to college in Taiwan, but now she's been in the United States double the amount of time she was in Taiwan. And she can't remember how to write certain characters. She'll look at certain characters and go, I'm pretty sure that's what this is. Oh, yeah. Like, she has to think. Because if you don't use it, you will lose it. Okay? So I'm all excited that my 8-year-old can read a lot of characters, but I'm not too excited because when I know that if I stopped today, he will forget probably most of it by the time he's 18. Okay? So be proud of yourself, but don't be smug. Okay? And don't be like, oh, don't count your chickens before they hatch, and don't be the rabbit, the hare, right? And the tortoise, right? Don't be napping and then expect to get to the finish line first, okay? So, did this go on longer than I thought it would? No, I think I said about 30 minutes. So if there's any questions, feel free to type them in. If not, I will let you guys go. I hope I wasn't like shouting at you. Sorry. I'm very passionate about this part, if you can't tell. And next week we will talk about the last part, which is writing. And then after that we can talk about different topics that are around teaching your kids how to speak Chinese. So it doesn't look like there's any questions, but thank you so much for joining me, and I really appreciate it. And let me know your questions in the comments if you are catching the replay, and I will try to answer them as quickly as I can. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.